Roll call, please.
Okay, we have roll call. Commissioner Garcia.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Here.
Commissioner Salas.
Here.
For the record, Commissioner Sandu is absent. Commissioner Singh.
Here.
Vice Chair Juarez. Vice Chair Juarez on
Here.
the online. Thank you, Juarez. And Chairwoman Curry.
Here.
Thank you.
Statement regarding public hearings. During the public hearing, I will first ask for staff's comments on and reports on the item being discussed. After staff's presentation, I will then open the hearing to the public. I will then close the public hearing, at which time no member of the public shall address the commission unless specifically asked by a member of the commission through the chair. The Planning Commission will then discuss the matter among themselves and take action on the item being considered. Potential conflicts of interest. Any commissioner who has a potential conflict of interest may now identify the item and recuse themselves from discussing and voting on the matter. All right, oral communications. At this time, any member of the public may address the commission regarding any item over which the commission has jurisdiction. No action or discussion will be taken on any item not on the agenda. Issues raised will be referred to the chairperson for review. Members of the public shall limit their remarks to 3 minutes.
As a reminder to callers on the line, please use *9 to raise your virtual hand and *6 to unmute yourself. Again, as a reminder to the callers on the line, please use *9 to raise your virtual hand and *6 to unmute yourself. Chairwoman Curry, there are no callers online.
Thank you. Consent calendar. All items listed under consent calendar are considered routine. The complete consent calendar will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote. For purposes of discussion, any commission member may have an item removed from the consent calendar and made part of the regular agenda. The commission can then approve the remainder of the consent calendar. Consideration and necessary action on the minutes of the July 11th, 2022 meeting.
Chairwoman, staff does have one quick update for that item here. Listed on the minutes for that meeting, it states also present were legal counsel Chang and McCann. Legal presence, McCann was not in attendance that evening, so that was a typo. So when the commission considers this item here, if you could do so with that notated change.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second that.
We have a first on the floor with Commissioner Salas and seconded by Commissioner Gonzalez. Commissioner Garcia.
Yes.
Commissioner Singh.
Yes.
Vice Chair Juarez.
Yes.
Chairwoman Curry.
Yes. Public hearing. Consideration and necessary action of a resolution for approval of a zoning text amendment number 2022-0016, ordinance amending Selma Municipal Code Section 11-28-8 relating to off-site signage and LED billboards.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Contract City Planner Trevor Stearns here. Staff had prepared a presentation to present to you guys as we wait for that to come up. This project is associated with some previous projects, and it does have some history and background that we'll go over. in the presentation itself, just kind of an overview. Obviously, there's more detail in the staff report package as well for your reference. So you may be aware of a similar application that was presented to you in the past, specifically application number 2021-0010. That was originally proposed as an applicant-driven application to amend the city's municipal code in regards to the billboard section, as mentioned by Chairwoman Corey, 11-28-8. That went through the Planning Commission and subsequently the City Council. City Council did not approve the zoning text amendment after a motion to approve was seconded but failed by a vote of 2-3. No additional motion was made and therefore the application was deemed denied due to a failed vote and no additional motion. However, during that same meeting, staff was directed by City Council to work with interested parties and stakeholders to gain a more comprehensive billboard ordinance for future consideration. Pursuant to the direction that council gave staff conducted multiple interviews with interested parties and also several roundtable discussions online via Microsoft Teams with several billboard companies and stakeholders. The resulting recommendation that's being presented to you today is a result of those discussions and for subsequent recommendation of approval to council at a later date. The public hearing for initial consideration of this application will be presented to City Council, or it has been noticed for City Council on August 15th. Just to highlight some of the changes that you may notice in the billboard ordinance amendment are minimum and maximum sign heights, citywide billboard capacity, allowable locations, maximum size, location on site, distance from other signs, upgrades, replacement and relocations of existing signs, and electronic billboards. The ordinance is attached to the Planning Commission staff report package and obviously elaborates in further detail. Here is a map that showcases the new location that would be opened if this ordinance were to be approved by City Council. Currently, the zoning ordinance only allows for billboards to be constructed along the 99 in industrial areas, either M1 or M2, properties that are zoned for industrial uses, south of Park Street. So you can see in the bottom right-hand corner there, the yellow polygon along the 99 corridor. That's where currently all of the billboards are located, or primarily all of the conforming billboards are located. Now, where you see the green in the top left-hand corner, that is where the proposed area to be opened for additional billboard signage. And it's still in line with the requirements that we see to the south there. It's only going to be allowed in industrial zoned properties. We're just expanding it to allow it in other areas of the city rather than only south of Park Street. Next slide, please. Here is a depiction of what that signage could look like. The increase in size and height is what you would typically see on the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side is a significantly smaller sign due to the constraints of the municipal code as it is right now. So you can see that it allows for upgrades in terms of height and also surface area of the sign. This project is subject to CEQA because it is a ordinance amendment and no construction is proposed. It would qualify for the common sense exemption referenced by those two code sections within the state CEQA guidelines. The common sense exemption allows for projects that can easily be determined as a project that won't impact the environment to a significant effect, therefore not needing any further CEQA analysis. Next slide, please. So to round it all out, staff's recommendation to Planning Commission is to approve a resolution to the City Council recommending the approval of zoning text amendment application number 2020, it should be 2022, sorry about that, 2022-0016, along with the consideration and approval of the notice of exemption. That concludes staff's presentation. If you have any further questions, or myself and Deputy City Manager Rob Terry would be happy to answer those.
So this is just an update to a previous Planning Commission approved project that was turned down by City Hall.
This is a separate application. It's considerably different from the previous amendment. I mean, for factors of it being applicant driven versus this city driven application, there's a difference there, but it also went through substantial changes as a result of the interviews and also the roundtable discussions that were directed by City Council for staff to conduct. So there are some changes that weren't previously reviewed by the Planning Commission.
I have a question, please. Does this amendment pretty much decides how many signs are going to be in that section?
It's a citywide capacity, total capacity that's being proposed in there. In addition to, there's also geographic parameters that are also limiting the total amount of signs available in the city limits. I believe, as the ordinance states, there's an allowed
24 would be the maximum number that the city would allow. But there are also, as Trevor had stated, there are geographic limitations to where, so depending on if a sign is placed in a certain area, that may actually bring that number down a bit if the geography of that then couldn't accommodate more. The reason why the city put both a number and the geographic constraints on it was to ensure that we would see a maximum number as opposed to having it a number that would stay open, especially when you start considering items such as annexation into new areas that would still have this number on it. And if it was going to exceed that number, because it would be, if approved, recommended for approval and then approved by the City Council, it would still have that maximum number on it. So in order to increase that, it would need to come back through the Planning Commission for recommendation and back to the City Council. Again, it really acts as a backstop or a check and balance to ensure that you wouldn't have items that could just continue to grow and grow and grow as annexation or activities such as that were to take place.
So when you say citywide, that's not just off of the 99. That could be any M1, M2 zoning in the city of Selma currently and future.
It
as a
is
result.
limited to just the 99 corridor.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So
So
for annexation and different parts this does not apply to it.
correct. It would be, so if we had an annexation area that took more of, adjacent to the 99 area, right? Say for instance, if you had, something to the north of the Walmart property, or north of, even though I was going to say Home Depot, but Pioneer Village, continuing north, going further and further adjacent to the 99, that would still have that number while the geographic limitations would still be in place. It would still have that maximum number of 24. So even if you had a very large annexation area, we don't anticipate that at this time, but even if you did have that, it would still have that backstop number of the 24, ensuring that that type of growth and expansion would really not be able to take place at a pace that's going to go further than what the city may wish to see at that time. It just ensures that continued communication for those type of placements would still be there. So we'd still have that number.
That would include both regular billboards and electronic billboards, or is it all signs of that size?
It
or
is just billboard,
Just,
just billboard advertising, which can mean static or lit, right? So it could be either one of those, but this is only specific to billboards. So this would not include signage that you'll see for businesses that is often referred to as freeway oriented signing, but it is for one specific business. This would be specific to billboards and does not include the freeway oriented signs.
and would that eliminate the smaller size signs that are currently on the 99, or is it those plus 24 new ones?
So anything that's existing right now would be grandfathered in and would still be deemed approved. It's usually the technical term is legal non-conforming, which means that it just doesn't conform to what the current standard is, but it did when it was built, which means that it's legal and it will remain legal. If they would choose to make adjustments to those existing signs that then go in line with any new approvals here, they would have the ability to do that, which means that if their height or their billboard signage, the actual facing of it could increase in size, they would be allowed to do that by right.
So they wouldn't have to get a conditional use permit to do an improvement to their current sign?
If they're going from static to digital, then a conditional use permit would be required. So any digital sign requires a conditional use permit within the proposed amendment.
But if they're just making it bigger to go along with the new guidelines, they don't need to do anything?
That is correct. It would, I mean, it would still require approval,
Permit.
but it would be staff level approval because it's a by right type of item. So it would be a reviewing of their plans to ensure that it does fit within the approved guidelines, and then they could move forward with that item.
There's 3 letters here from different companies. 2 of them don't sound very happy with the process. One of them was fairly supportive of the changes staff was recommending. Have those other 2 companies been brought in to discuss? Are they okay now with this new legislation that you're trying to pass?
Both of those companies have been engaged throughout the entire process. And all companies that were engaged had input that they wanted to see. Some of those items from everyone was considered. Some of them, well, I should say everything was considered, of course. Some of those items made it into the ultimate draft. Some of them did not. And the reason why is because staff's responsibility, of course, is to know the directive and the feedback, the policies of what we know the city council wants to see, what type of control mechanisms they want to have in place. And so we utilize that as the compass as we're going through these activities with everyone. We're never going to be able to come up with something that everyone is going to 100% buy off on. And it's also not uncommon to have 1 or sometimes 2 companies when you're looking at zone text amendment, because it covers the entire community. It's not uncommon for someone to be unhappy with something that is being proposed in any way. So we worked very hard to make sure that we had a collaborative process where people absolutely had their inputs and everything was considered and discussed. But I would say that the viewpoints, and I believe that both representatives for both of those companies are likely here, and if not here in person, certainly online. I would say that the comment letters that they had submitted would still be accurate with the position that they take at this time.
Are these in line with the cities north and south of us, Fowler, Kingsburg?
They're not. And in all honesty, the majority of cities, even cities the size of Fresno right now, are banning billboards within city limits, period. So the fact that we're trying to find ways to allow billboards to still have some type of presence within our city limits is actually more unique.
Specific to your question about Fowler, Fowler prohibits them. Kingsburg does allow them, and it's in line with some of the size proposed changes that we have included in our ordinance.
Usually the discussions more often now are about making them more difficult to have, removing, as opposed to where we're actually trying to provide for a little more allowance for that type of activity to happen within the community.
I'd like to discuss 2 existing signs. You said freeway adjacent or
Freeway oriented.
freeway oriented. Thank you. Would that be considered the cattleman sign, the neon cattleman sign?
It would.
that's- Okay.
Yep.
And then the ones that are up on the building, for example, on Selma Toyota or already on a pole at Farney Ford, those are existing electronic signs that are going to be allowed. One of them is going to be a business sign. The other one is a billboard, correct?
Yeah, those would not fall under the guise of this because we're looking at billboards. The freeway oriented signs are those that are advertising a singular business. They're put up by the business and or property owner. And they are, of course, trying to advertise their individual business. Whereas billboards, of course, whoever is paying for that advertising space, those are the companies that are looking to advertise there. So we certainly know that there is a lot of interest both from the Planning Commission and the City Council to look at the freeway oriented signing. And so that's something that we have already begun the background research and work on, and the Planning Commission should certainly expect to see that here in the coming months. There's a lot more work on that one than there is on the billboards, in all honesty, because it varies to a much greater degree.
Other cities are banning those billboards. It's usually for a reason. Why are we trying to do the opposite and amend our municipal code when we do know those are distractions when people are driving?
Mhm.
That section of the 99 has already tons of accidents year to date. Constantly work on the freeway. So a split second distraction to look at one of those signs could be fatal.
No, that's a great question. And it's all part of the overall strategy to make sure that items are more aesthetically clean and organized. Whereas right now, unfortunately, there's just a lot of placement of items that are not in line with policy, or there isn't policy to be able to cover them. So this is part of the strategy that we're looking at to try to encourage organized advertising. And it's going to be done in a consistent way. So then aesthetically and obviously geographically, you'll be able to have a good spread and some uniformity to how these items are taking place. We believe that it will likely also assist in addressing some of that future freeway oriented signing as well.
Any questions for staff before we move to? I now open the public section of the discussion. Anybody would like to speak for the project? Time is limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name and your address. Come forward to the mic.
That on? My name is Jeremy Gregory. My wife. Originally, we brought the project. I remember a lot of you guys from last year, and that the building department did California Caltrans, and I think a lot of the concern is oversaturation of billboards. And we were talking about the freeway where we're trying to propose these new billboards. Caltrans asked for their 500 foot apart and 1,000 foot apart from another digital. That would also additionally limit, excuse me, a little nervous, limit some of the billboards that would. I'm for the project. We've been through a lot of phone conversations, roundtables, I guess, if you will. And not everybody's going to be happy. We get that. We're not super happy with everything, but there's compromise, and we're trying to do something incredible here, something unique, something a little different, as you can see on the picture. Normally see on the freeways. So, have any questions? I'm nervous. Did I say that?
You're fine. I do have a question about the industry. Do you lease the land on which the poles are erected from the business or from the property owner?
Yes, they're a long-term lease.
Okay.
So we own and operate the billboard. We run, operate the billboard. So I wear a lot of hats in business. So I may be meeting with you here when light bulb department or graffiti department, if you will.
Thank you.
The embellishments that are being required, is that something that you're able to do? Is that going to be a hardship for you to do?
There's a little more cost involved, but when we posed the idea, we wanted to look attractive, a little more, we were in LA a little while back and even in Sacramento area. And a lot of the billboards look the same, old, brown, gray or whatnot. And especially Selma, we want it to be more attractive. We want the city. They're fiberglass is what it is, that a lot more attractive. So we thought that was a great idea. It's something that's not around here. So it's an improvement. It's an improvement to the billboards. That eerie silence.
I think that's it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
If anyone else would like to comment for or against the project, please come forward.
My name is Bonique Emerson, and I am a planner with Precision Civil Engineering, and I represent Outfront. And I just wanted to speak to some of our concerns over the ordinance. The handout that you received is that I brought, so I'll be referring to that. But I just wanted to say that currently, based on the map shown as Exhibit D in your staff report, there are 5 billboards in the city of Selma with potentially 10 faces. And we do know that there are other billboards within the city, and we're assuming that these other billboards are considered legally non-conforming by the city and not counted in the overall face count. And it is unclear what the total number of legally non-conforming billboards. And this means that the city is proposing to allow 14 additional billboard faces. And based on spacing, this could allow 7 to 9 new signs, depending on how many faces each sign is proposing, each billboard is proposing. And we would like the city to add language in the text amendment that states billboards can't exceed the current number of billboards in existence, instead of allowing the city to permit 24 total billboard faces. Allowing this many additional billboards will result in the overconcentration in the city. And like I mentioned before, the handout that you guys have in front of you depicts what could result if this ordinance is. So this is a view looking south on the north end of Selma. It's along the 99 and it's in the green area that's in that Exhibit D that I mentioned before. And this shows it's approximate. It's a rough visual photo simulation showing the billboards 500 feet apart. So we would recommend that the proposed text amendment either be denied or referred back to staff for further.
Thank you.
My address is 351 West Cromwell Avenue. That a majority of the industry stakeholders not want this proposed ordinance. Don't think there's been an accurate number provided. Really, because we don't know. Whatever that number is. Proposed ordinance seeks to add new billboards before we. Counterintuitive, since at the end, we are an outdoor advertising company. Outfront's position is to therefore, at least for now. Our desire is to limit unnecessary proliferation, not harm the aesthetic appearance of Selma. We want competition. We want a fair playing field for all sign companies to compete. Proposed text amendment does the opposite. Outfront submitted a separate text amendment a few months ago. Either has not yet been vetted by staff, which is possible and understandable, or it has not completed the staff analysis process. Our proposed text amendment seeks to not exceed the current number of, very least, not until we know what the number is. About the process very quickly. The process was indeed inclusive, but I don't believe it was a collaborative. Your act of our being present at these 3 meetings not result in the majority's position being incorporated in the final work product. We fully understand that not every idea is a good one, and we're not suggesting that bad ideas be part of the final product. Collaboration does not suggest the incorporation of bad ideas. We grant that. However, the process, at least to us, seemed to be predestined and predetermined.
Thank you.
Todd Hanson, Sun Outdoor.
And your address, please.
That ma'am,
Your address, please, for the record.
1381 Truxton Avenue, Bakersfield, California. So first off, I'm here on behalf of Sun Outdoor Advertising. We are your last builder of billboards. We have the south of town. Small guy, that's me. Answer to make that sign the size of the existing new, about another $400,000. State, the county, and the city in depth, and the property owner to build those signs just 2 years. Us, and we sell them to the local advertisers on a regular basis. Are definitely not in line with the change of this ordinance. Dramatically hurt my business. Revenue, because the advertiser, if I'm an advertiser, I'd be buying the larger, bigger signs. And we're here on behalf of, to say that I don't want to move forward with this ordinance. Looked at, if anything, put the signs down to the same size that the current ordinance calls for and not allow them to be that size of the length. Not have a problem with the zoning where you're going to put them at, but you just can't make them that much larger because it just hurts our business. Happens here, and we've been partner with you guys. And so with that, they accepted, we'll really property owner, John Shea, who is our property owner, his lease revenue generated. And then in line, kind of with Outfront, we're not in line with this ordinance change. Process happened, but we never in favor of the outcome of every process. Size down to the existing size, county or the city.
How many signs do you have in the city limits of Selma? And where are they located?
500 feet away from that. And a mountain view just north. Strenuous challenges because that's where contaminated water and things like that. So we went above and beyond with the city.
Thank you. Sorry, I have to interrupt because the 3 minutes are up.
What's that?
The 3 minutes are up, so I have to thank you for your comments. Thanks.
My name is Robbie Schutz. There's too much of the billboards. Because it's tacky. And so how it would become, because there's 24 I know there's a bunch of issues. And they are not. For the city, for a business. Like the lack of control the city would have over these billboards would be non-existent. I notice it does say we would have a 24 turn it on or off, but it's just like that, like we're giving them that much control, and it's just to market what benefit for profit. It's just and it just makes us look like fog, like
Thank you. Sir,
Please, you,
sir, hold on just 1 second, sorry. No problem. No, please, thank you. Would you please check if there's anyone online?
As a reminder to the callers on the line, please use *9 to raise your virtual hand and *6 to unmute yourself. We do have 2 people with a hand raised. Naran, excuse me if I butcher your last name, Summers, Temerson, who are allowed to talk.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Naran Somasundram. I'm a legal representative for Outfront Media. And as other representatives of Outfront, I believe, have already commented on tonight, there is an application for a zoning amendment for this exact section that Outfront submitted a few months ago that has yet to be heard by the Planning Commission or City Council, as it is currently being processed by staff in the city. And we would ask that the Planning Commission not rush through with this particular zoning amendment before you today, knowing that there is a proposed zoning amendment currently being reviewed to cover the exact same section. And we would ask that you not rush this for a couple of reasons in particular. First and foremost, if you take a look at the resolution that staff is recommending, you pass tonight, one of the findings you will be making is that this zoning text amendment is in the best interests of the city and the health, safety, and welfare of its residents. And I would ask the Planning Commission to consider whether it has examined the issues enough to make that conclusion. I'll point out that neither the staff report nor the staff discussion tonight really talked in detail about this zoning text amendment's compliance with Selma's general plan or other existing sections of the Selma zoning code. For instance, section 11-28-1 of the Selma zoning code, which states the purposes of the sign regulations in general, state that the entire point of zoning provisions on this subject are to encourage signs which are well designed and encourage a desirable urban character which has a minimum of overhead clutter. So I would ask the Planning Commission, and we would ask the Planning Commission, to really consider whether this zoning text amendment achieves the purposes that are already set out in the Selma zoning code for its sign regulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Kerr, we also have Andy Goodman who has comments. Andy, you're now allowed to talk.
Okay, how's that? Can everybody hear me? Andy Goodman, West Coast Billboards, 1056 Parkwood Avenue, Madera, California. Commissioners, thank you for hearing this agenda item tonight. Staff has done a good job with obtaining input from the stakeholders on the writing of this zone text amendment, which I will refer to as the ZTA. As you know, this has been a culmination of a year-long process where all the stakeholders have been invited to participate. As the mayor said in the last council meeting, and this is not verbatim, a year of public hearings and roundtable meetings with the industry is more than enough time for the general public to get notice of this ZTA. In fact, the Planning Commission approved a less restrictive ZTA on 9/21/22 for the applicant West Coast Billboards. Again, we would like to thank you for voting for the original ZTA and look forward to you voting in favor of this city-sponsored ZTA. I also like to say that it's amazing to me how many people out front media would throw at this to try to stop a ZTA that is sponsored by the city, that has been written in the best interest of the city, all for out front to protect its market share in the Selma area. We'd like you to take that into consideration. This was something where the city council had asked all the stakeholders to get together and work on this together. And the claim at the time in front of the city council that got them to vote against this original ZTA was that these companies walked in the door and said, this isn't fair. We didn't have an opportunity to participate. And here they are today talking about the over-proliferation of billboards in the area when they know that only M2 zones are available, when they know that spacing is 500 feet from static signs and 1,000 feet from other digital signs, and when they know Caltrans regulations are very stringent. They also know that this ZTA is more stringent than it was when you had originally voted for it back in September of 21. So we would like you to take that into consideration, please. We would like you to take into consideration that you voted for this originally back in September, and now the city is sponsoring this new ZTA, and we're asking you to approve it just like the staff has asked you to approve it. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak with you. Have a good evening.
As a reminder to callers on the line, please use *9 to raise your virtual hand and *6 to unmute yourself. Chair Curry, there's no one else online.
Thank you. At this point, I close the public section of the hearing and I'll turn it to the commission for discussion. God on this. When Christmas tree lane. I don't know what regulations going. What makes Selma better? Drive from Visalia all the way here with abs. Us eliminated. Some tall, some short. Fowler, and again, all clean driving. That's kind of my issue with this. I don't see how it gives a better freeway front for Selma while we're already suffering from white billboard. Hurtful at night. That's my opinion.
Farney's sign is not a billboard. It is not included in this whole ordinance that changes that we're trying to make. I hate that sign too, sorry.
I think it's also important to notate, you had made mention of how distracting that sign is. That sign has one major item that first and foremost is already in conflict with Caltrans regulations. That sign should not even exist. Second, any digital billboard cannot have animation. And that is what is so distracting about that Farney sign. And while that's not part of the discussion that we're having tonight, it's critical to make sure the Planning Commission would understand that you cannot have animation on a digital billboard. It still has to be a static image. It just gives them the opportunity for that image to change. It's not a 2D printing of that item, but you can't have any movement on the billboard. It is a picture that is projected as a digital image, but just like a photograph that you would take, right? And then if you were to blow up that photograph and that image and digitally show it, it doesn't have movement within it. And that's the same way that the billboards are. So they cannot have animation within a digital billboard. And that is listed very clearly within this proposed amendment.
So there would be a minimum of 1,000 feet between any signs that had pictures on them.
Correct.
500 feet. Now, this that was given to us is their representation of every 500 feet.
That is correct.
We're not lit. So at night, they're going to be dark other than a light shining on them or something. They would be allowed every 500 feet. Or is that something that a conditional use permit would have to be approved for that to be within 500 feet of another sign? So this wouldn't necessarily happen if each sign has to come before us and then we would be able to approve it or disapprove it.
That's the reason why we had the geographic limitations and that number, right, was to make sure that we had as much control on both sides of those while also still allowing for the industry to have business, right? What we're really trying to do is make it possible here for additional businesses or even the same businesses that are already within our community to be able to expand and to continually grow. But to do that with as much control as we can possibly have. The 500 foot and the 1,000 foot, as has been stated multiple times by people, Caltrans has very strict regulations about the items that can happen within their right of way or even within the areas of influence within their right of way. That's where the 500 and the 1,000 actually come from. A lot of the limitations that we chose not to put in our regulations is because Caltrans already has a significant manual that has to do with freeway billboard signage. And it doesn't make any sense for us to recreate the wheel per se if they already have those items that are regulated. But the items like the 500 foot for static signs and the 1,000 for digital buffering between them is directly from the Caltrans manual.
Do you have an exact number of how many signs exist now in the city of Selma?
We do have an exact number of those that are legal and even legal non-conforming. We do know that there are signs that are up within the city that are neither legal nor conforming. We do not have an exact count on those that we have gone through. We have counted those along the 99 corridor, but we have not gone throughout all of the community. And we know that there is a good number of signs that are not legal, and they are also not conforming because they're not legal.
So how many signs are there?
On the 99 corridor,
There's 5 signs, 10 faces.
Legal? And what about
the
illegal signs?
for the illegal signs,
I know of 3.
yeah, and I
Just
can't,
driving around.
I want to say 6, but that was very early on in our discussions. And this was also when we had yet to really pare it down just to that 99 area, but I believe that number was 6. We know throughout town that there's other areas way outside of the 99 corridor where there are a lot of signs that are illegally in place.
Can we get an exact number of all the billboards? Whether it's a LED or especially the
Sure. I can tell you the reason why we didn't spend a lot of time going on the counting the exact number of signs that we had in place, and in particular those that are illegal or non-conforming, is because if they're illegal or non-conforming, regardless of whether this were to pass as a proposed text amendment or not, they actually need to have code enforcement abate them. And they should be going through that process, which is why we did not put a lot of time into, well, how many are there out there? Because whether it's 1 that is illegal and non-conforming or 100 that is illegal and non-conforming doesn't matter for what we're looking to do for the proposed amendment in this regard. If those items are illegal, they should be removed.
So the number that we need to be concerned with is how many?
24 would be the maximum number.
And how many are there?
6,
That's it.
correct. And that's faces.
So we won't have bases. Why would we deny it? Pass or not pass tonight, is going to determine the number.
That we're gonna have, regardless of,
It could be up to that maximum amount. That is correct.
but that's at both ends of town, so maybe
That's total.
12 north and 12 south, or
It could be, or it could be 18 and 6. I mean, it could be, but 24 total throughout the city limits within that 99 corridor is exactly what we're looking at there. And this limits billboard placement to just within that 99 corridor. So it eliminates the allowance for billboards to be anywhere else within the community.
That the cities around allow them, most likely we're gonna have all 24 up, because if somebody can't advertise in Fowler or in Kingsburg, they're gonna come advertise in Selma.
It's possible.
What I find strange is that the number of people in the outdoor advertising industry that oppose this. They seem to, and I may have misheard them, they seem to believe that it was an unfair process. I guess my question is, staff, what do you think about the process? Was everything considered? Was it fair and even and balanced for everybody?
It was absolutely as inclusive as you can ever be for a process. Of course, all of our efforts were there to ensure that any stakeholders that were interested in participating absolutely had the ability to participate. I do think it's important to notate that when you listen to those that did speak tonight, 3 separate individuals were all speaking for one company which actually has the most amount of billboards within the community today. I believe that that points to the fact that why would you want to open up more opportunity for any other company to be able to come in and have a chance to take any of your market share? So I think that that's very important for the Planning Commission, first and foremost, to understand there. Second, they also talked about an application that they had submitted. They have been minimally responsive when it comes to questions about that application that they have put in and our attempts to try to schedule a public hearing for that. So for any comments made about that, we did recently say we are scheduling a public hearing for that because we are required as public servants when an application comes in to make sure that due process is being regarded and that items are going to move forward. We gave them the opportunity to either pull back on that application or to move forward, and it has been a stall game from them. And so we finally had to say, then we're going to schedule it and simply going to move forward. And that is scheduled to come before the Planning Commission in the following month. While there were certainly people that were saying, you know, hey, we have concerns and we don't like this. Unfortunately, and I hate to have to be as blunt about this as possible, but it's very clear that that all comes down to competition. And if they can eliminate competition being possible within a municipal code, then they don't risk losing any market share.
Thank you.
The number of signs like everybody's been talking about. I mean, we'll have some control, but it'll be limited. Then the size of the sign itself. I think what we've got out there right now is pretty big to go up to 55 feet like the doubling the square footage of the faces. I don't like I don't like those signs out there as big as they are. And if we're gonna raise the height and double the size of the face, it's just gonna be glaring in your face. I don't think it's a good look for Selma to start with. Coming down, I drove today, just today, I drove up and down the freeway, and then yesterday, I drove down 198 in Hanford and Lemoore. There's nothing like even what we've got here. I mean, there are some, but I didn't count them, but it's nothing we're gonna be glowing in the dark with Fowler and Kingsburg in the dark. That many, or we're open to that many, because we don't have any.
And that number was chosen as we laid out everything geographically and looked at what that maximum could be.
I understand, yeah, but we're limited to so much freeway
Absolutely.
space.
It's certainly within the Planning Commission's purview to say, we're not comfortable with that number. That was literally nothing more than a, what do we think geographically that maximum could be, and putting that backstop number in to make sure that as annexations were to happen in the north or the southern portion of town, that number would then be set to keep a control there so that there couldn't continue to just be exponential growth as we may annex. It was really a check and balance.
What about the size itself? On the list of items that they're agreed upon,
Mhm.
the size itself, could that be changed?
It could,
Conform with what's out there right now?
it could. The reason why that sizing also went was in collaboration with the discussions of the stakeholders and what the industry standards are now.
Right, but if we're going to leave ones that are already there,
Mhm.
it's gonna be pretty hideous. We're gonna have a giant billboard, then a small one, then a giant one, then a small one. Nothing, they're not all similar to say, oh, aesthetically pleasing. That, I don't think that's a good look for Selma as you get on the 99 personally. I don't think, none of us here is worried about competition or non-competition in the industry. We're concerned with two things: the looks and the message we're gonna send when people come to our town, and the safety of our citizens as they drive on the freeway. So I would say we need to send it back to staff to find a different compromise. Smaller signs, if you want to increase the number, fine, but not to a point of 24. We're gonna look all lit at night. Because eventually everybody's gonna go that direction.
Mhm.
If you have one that is not lit and the one next to you is lit, that attracts more attention than the one non-lit is gonna move to that. So we have to consider always the max that we're approving and what that effect is gonna do, not hoping that we will not get to that max. So right now, what I'm looking at is, okay, we're gonna have 24 giant billboards that are all lit at the same time.
12,
it-
12,
Well,
yeah,
because they can't,
24 faces.
Okay, 24. So basically,
but,
yeah, we
but
have
not
to
all,
consider
but
the
not all of them
max.
are going to be LED because.
we don't know that.
though.
We don't know
Well,
that.
they can't
They-
be close to each other. They have to be 1,000.
Yeah, they couldn't be. If they were all LED, you would see roughly half that number.
Half the number, yeah. The number I have an issue with, just because this shows, like she said, Christmas tree lane.
Hmm.
But I understand from the beginning why they wanted a bigger sign. They said when the big trucks are going down the freeway, you just, if you're in the middle lane, you're not even gonna see one single billboard because of the height of them and the size of them. So that was explained to us. That's why they wanted a bigger, higher sign. I can see higher, maybe not quite as big as what's being proposed, maybe a bit bigger, but that it's like dwarfing the other sign completely. So I can understand where the competition is like, obviously, yeah, I don't want to buy the tiny sign when I can buy the big sign. But I can see the point that the initial applicant was trying to make, that he wants his signs to be able to be seen. And with a diesel truck going by, you're not going to see them. I agree, the number should be capped at a much smaller number, so that we don't have an inundation of all of these signs all up and down the freeway. Granted, they're at the south end and the north end of town, there's still, that's a lot of signs. Even if our city limits go out 10 years from now, all these signs are already going to be piled up in this. We're not taking into consideration that the city limits may go out more.
Oh, it will. Yeah, it certainly will
well,
go out. Yeah,
But I mean, but they're going to be concentrated where the city limits
understood.
are now. And
Get to come back and do it again.
I think that we would, I think the consensus is we'd like it all to go back to staff and work on it some more.
So I think I would recommend you have some very specific thoughts and items that you would like to see adjusted. It makes much more sense for the planning commission to make those recommended changes in our meeting tonight, as opposed to saying, let's have staff go back and have the same discussions on items that could be done tonight. If the concern is 24, then what number does the planning commission think is more appropriate? Would that be 12? Is it 10? Is it something of that nature? As far as the height of the sign, if the height of the sign is an issue, then what height does the planning commission think? Keeping in mind that this is a recommendation to the city council. This is not an actual approval action that the planning commission is taking tonight. You're making your recommendation as the planning commission to the city council for what you feel is appropriate. And that recommendation could be everything from we recommend approval as is to we recommend approval with these amendments, or we recommend denial. The planning commission has the ability to make any recommendation that you feel is appropriate under your guys as the commission. But I would certainly recommend that those specific changes be considered before just saying, kick it back to staff and continue to have these conversations, because that simply leads into another bare minimum 1 month's worth of time. And we're then going to bring that item back for another recommendation, where we could very easily tonight be able to vet through what those items are. And if you don't feel that could be done, then the recommendation could be, we do not support this and we are recommending denial of this as proposed.
Would it be possible for the city to address first the illegal signs just on the 99 corridor? So we know what it's going to look like, because right now recommending a number that we don't know which ones of the existing ones are staying, which ones are going to be gone,
Mhm.
could be also tough. So I would say, I'm not saying we need right now to address every sign in the city of Selma. I'm just
Mhm.
saying the area of concern right now is that corridor. the 99 corridor. So if we could know which signs are going to be gone, it will give us a better idea of how many we can recommend.
Okay, that is where that number of the 6 does come in. We do know that 6 of those would remain, and anything outside of those 6 are not permitted.
Okay.
So the one near Mountain View, the electronic sign,
Mhm.
and the one that had the Stella advertisement on it. Those are the 6 that we have now.
Correct.
That's it.
Permitted.
Permitted,
Correct,
so-
yes.
Okay, so, and you guys are dealing with the illegal ones, so eventually those will
That
be
is,
gone.
and I'll be very honest, that is a very long-term code enforcement issue. A sign eradication, it is not uncommon for, any item that is not permitted that's in place like that, for that to go through its legal process. It's not uncommon for that to take multiple years. So I would just want to make sure the planning commission does understand that.
That we can't help that. We can't change as far as what we're doing now.
For as for the height wise, how the legal ones we are having and the maximum height is 30.
For those that are legal right now,
32 feet, yeah.
Or to the bottom, yeah.
that's correct, yeah. And it would, the maximum height would then go to 50, what's being proposed.
The height of truck and trailer when it's passing by on the. So if also the non-compliant signs, they are height limit like below the 32 feet.
Well, before we do that, another option we have is to table into the next meeting, correct?
You could do that.
How would that affect next week's city council meeting? Because isn't this supposed to be on the council meeting?
It is, that public hearing would also be postponed to date certain following the planning commission's next meeting. So that would bump out a couple meetings for them because of course we meet once a month in the planning commission.
I think we're all kind of hung up on the number of signs, correct?
Well,
Size for me,
yeah, well, I think cutting the number down in half, I think that would be except, well, if we cut it by half, say we said 12, there is 6 already there. So that would allow 6 signs to be put up, 6 additional signs, and those would have to be spread out north, 6 additional.
faces.
both have 2 faces.
3 additional then, if they were 2 faces?
Yeah, then the number that we call out is faces. So when we say 24, that would be 12 single pole, 2-sided, right? So if you were thinking 3 signs is all you want to see traditional like single pole, then it would be 6. The number of course would be 6 because it could allow 2 faces. Yeah.
So the 6 right now is only 3 poles, in essence, 3 signs, but it's got 2 faces.
Correct.
And that's what's currently there now.
That's correct. Those are that are currently permitted. That is
There are
correct.
more right now than the 3.
But I don't think the illegal ones should determine what we're passing here.
Well, it wouldn't
So-
add to the number. That would still be within that total. So anything right now that is illegal and is not permitted would not count toward any of the numbers that we're looking at right now because they shouldn't even be there. They could, however, if they wanted to remove an illegal sign and then go through the process to place it legally, they could do that. And of course, then that would count toward that number.
Yeah, but that's,
Those are not
those are not-
billboards. I
yeah.
know they're not billboards, but add to what's there now.
everything that we see now is south, from Floral south. So we're adding that whole section on the northbound, from
Everything
walkbound all the way
Rockwell,
to
down
pretty much to Manning Avenue.
It would only be within the existing city limits, not within the sphere of influence.
And where's our city limits northbound?
It goes close to where the Rockwell wraparound happens north of the Farney site. Up several hundred feet past that.
But on the other side.
Correct.
Yeah, Manning. is
Yeah,
south.
well before
side
Manning,
of
if you were headed north, yeah.
No,
I thought
south
they
of,
passed
south,
above
yeah,
Manning.
south of Manning is Fowler, city limits already.
Hmm.
Up to that, up to Manning Avenue.
Up
is
to,
Selma.
up to probably, no, like Springfield?
Yes, it's the
Springfield.
Springfield alignment, correct.
Spring-
Where the current city limit line is right now. While the sphere of influence goes beyond that right now, not the city limit line. And what we're looking at is only within the city limits.
Asking, where's this? Have an address of Selma that eventually could be in.
Hmm. Yeah, understood. Yeah, it is south of the Manning Avenue alignment.
Like another amendment or, you know.
And that is why we were proposing that number of 24 was to try to have a backstop on that. Thinking future growth, right? When we annex area, we still wanted to be able to have that hard stop number. And if that number causes the planning commission concern, by all means, that was nothing more than staff saying, here was the maximum amount within the area given, and we wanted to make sure that we had the backstop for future growth so that we would have the opportunity to come back and talk about it again, instead of just saying, if everything was just geographic, 500 foot, 1,000 foot, based upon how the sign is and how far apart it needs to be. And then we were to annex an area and say it took in a quarter-mile stretch of the 99, by default, that would then open that up again. As far as now, if you're within that 500, that 1,000 of where anything sits, you could just continue to add signs and add signs. That's the reason why we put that number in there. And I think inadvertently, it ended up scaring
It
people more.
sounds like a lot, but technically it's only 12 signs because you got a sign on the front and the sign on the back.
Correct.
I mean,
Where we have 6 already. So we're talking, and those 6, of course, would be included in that 24.
Have we asked other cities why are against billboards?
Yeah, we have. We've spoken with, I didn't personally speak with Kingsburg. I know I spoke with representatives in Fresno, spoke with representatives in Fowler. It runs the gamut. Some of them, it's just the city council does not want to see them within the city limits. Some of them it's safety concerns. Some of them it's aesthetic concerns. Fresno's, they were having a lot of problems with vandalism on theirs and graffiti. So part of their code enforcement thought process there was to simply back off from that. Fresno had a slew of reasons why they chose to do what they do. Of course, they have a much larger population, right? And a lot more challenges that come along
Selma
with
has
that.
its share of graffiti as well, even
Absolutely.
on private signs.
Absolutely
on
do.
Private businesses. That, and this is going to just be.
It could be, yeah.
Eyes and, you know,
I mean, I think basically those are our two issues, the number and the size.
I'm okay with the size.
You're okay with the size? I'm okay with the height. I can't gauge how much bigger that is. I mean, from the picture that they showed us, it looks bigger, but it doesn't look grossly bigger. Yeah. 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 I see that. But where do we get a number from for size? I mean,
As far as the actual size of the sign, that was in discussions with the stakeholders and for what the industry standard is at this time.
that is the industry standard,
That size,
what
correct?
you're proposing.
Like only
That's
one,
six,
I mean,
seven.
so you're.
Mhm.
And I'm not talking about how many people spoke for out front, right?
Mhm.
But there was 3 different entities that spoke against it.
Mhm.
Only one entity is okay with the size and the number and all of that. So I'm not sure all stakeholders have been really represented or their opinion have been taken in consideration. Obviously, there was more people, and again, not counting, I'm counting out front as one.
Mhm.
But there were
No, understood.
2 others that
Understood.
spoke against it.
Mhm.
So I'm not so sure that this is really what all stakeholders want.
No, I didn't say what stakeholders wanted. It was the feedback on the sizing of the sign was that the industry standard for signs is this size that is being proposed for the new one. Yeah, that was consistent with Outfront, the feedback that we received from them. We know that Sun is not, while they acknowledge that that is an industry standard now, their concern, of course, is the fact that they built at what the maximum was before, which means they put their dollars in when that size was smaller. But everyone across the board was very acknowledged that yes, that sizing is the standard. That does not necessarily mean that's what exists in all areas, because we currently had a smaller size, which we know Sun had built at, but there wasn't any argument about what is the industry standard as far as size and what is the most common and what are we actually seeing, which
They
is the
all-
recommended size.
They
that we're
all
bringing
agreed
forward.
that the bigger sign is the industry standard.
That
The
is
other
correct.
companies agreed that that was the industry standard.
So, and the city, of course, because of freedom of speech, will have no control over what kind of message will be displayed on behalf of the city of Selma on those signs, right?
When you say on behalf of the city of Selma,
Basically, this is freeway front of our city, right? Somebody can go stay there, whatever they want on that sign. The city will have no say because of the freedom of speech, correct?
There's regulations.
right, correct.
There's.
But
we-
if it
we were
is
already
something
told.
being advertised that is legal in the state of California, but against the views of the city of Selma, they still can advertise it there, whether we like it or not, because again, freedom of speech.
That I would have to really defer to legal counsel on that one. While I say that I think that that's likely a mostly correct statement, I know that there are always going to be extenuating circumstances, and unfortunately, the answer of it depends. But I would say that that is a mostly accurate statement in my opinion.
Thank you.
They can't advertise anything illegal, but you're talking about cannabis or something, which is legal. We may not want to see a sign about cannabis as you're driving down the freeway. So, but we wouldn't have any control over it.
If as far as the messaging itself, if it were something that is legal and certainly something that would be protected by free speech, then no.
But we have that problem now anyway. If somebody want to put up a sign, we have no control over the tiny signs even. Is that correct?
That's as far as the message that's being delivered, that would be correct. Yeah.
So that doesn't change by us passing this or not passing this. That is still
Yeah, that
the case.
I think that exists regardless.
Risk a variety of messages that could be this.
Are we ready to say something? I would like, but we only have 2 things that were, because going through the list that they've given us, the proposed changes, the the minimum height, the maximum height, the height variability, the pole size, the distance from other signs, CUP is still required. Replacement and relocation of existing, electronic messaging for billboards is being allowed, but no animation, which we know all that stuff. So I think the biggest issue that we have is the number and the size.
Also, we have two different.
Well,
Here we have.
For clarification, it's 50 feet. So that the picture was just a reference, but it's off by 5 feet.
We have.
Is that a typo?
55,
Yeah.
it's not 55, it's 50.
it's 50.
50.
The ordinance, yeah, it's proposing 50.
Yeah, our apologies. That is a typo. That should be 50. On the graphic, that should be 50.
Well-
It will be increase of 18 feet.
18.
Correct.
But we could say yes, or we could say no. If we say yes, we throw it to the city council.
I mean, I think that this has gone on a long time. And I think that we should at least make recommendations so that it can be taken to city council and then they can take it from there. I would make a motion to approve the zoning text amendment with the following changes. The maximum number to be 16, which means we already have 6. 10 is really only 5 signs though.
Have 3. Other 3 would be more.
So just for clarity, when you say 3, we have 6.
6,
And another 6, I think.
so
would
then
be-
6
12.
faces. Right,
12.
so 12 faces.
12 faces.
okay.
Okay, I think the height is fine. The increase in height. I just don't know about size.
This height, drivers of sedans don't have to look up. I'm assuming the current billboard size, it's usually at an eyesight,
Mhm.
right? Eye level of a sedan. So what happens when we increase it another up instead of looking in front of them?
Text will be larger, so they'll be able to see it. That'll be probably the biggest advantage of it.
Height, increasing height is.
Or from the,
For the small.
lanes, even in the different lanes.
Action.
But I think if it's big, it's easy to glance at it and then take it and go on your merry way from there. If it's smaller, that's what I, and I kind of tend to try to concentrate because it's small and I can see it.
For aesthetics reasons, so we don't have one short sign, one tall sign, can we say all on one side of the freeway, the new 3 signs or the 6 faces go on the opposite end, so they're not looking like tall and short?
Yeah, they put them anywhere.
Well, the way it's
And-
currently written, as long as they're within that criteria,
Signs of certain size kept together.
you know, my only concern with that one is that would end up limiting items to the place where the city could be legally challenged for not having enough appropriate allowance or uniformity within their zoning code. So that would be really the only concern. While I completely understand the aesthetic and the reason why that would be desired there, my concern would be the potential challenge that would present for the city on a liability side.
So I just want to be clear, if we approve as is, it goes to the city declines, they can reapply, right?
Well, this is a city-driven
the city's doing
application,
this.
right? So, but if we were to, whatever the planning commission does tonight is recommendational, right? As far as moving forward to the city council. So then based upon whatever recommendation ultimately the planning commission makes, that will go to the city council and they will be the ones that would take the final action on that, whether or not supporting the actual recommendation the planning commission came forward with, or taking an action that is not directly in line with that recommendation, but the planning commission would be making a recommendation.
The recommendation, if we come up with a amendment to the recommendation and limit the number of signs, change the number of signs of the available, then city council cannot change it at their meeting, or can they?
They could, yeah. Again, it's just a recommendation that the planning commission would be bringing forward. So, you know, and with any amendments that would be made tonight, that is clearly communicated to the city council. Here was the original proposal. The recommendation made by the planning commission was to, you know, support approval with these amendments to that proposal, and then it's left to the council to have discussions and decide whether or not they support the planning commission's recommendation, or they elect to take an action that is not in line with that recommendation.
Okay. Back to my motion. I move that we approve the zoning text amendment with the following changes. That the number be limited to 12 total signs and not the 24,
And just for clarity, 12 faces.
12 faces. That the height be allowed to increase to 50 feet, and that the square footage maximum size would be 560 square feet, which would be 14 by 40. Pardon me? I'm saying reduce it. Reduce it to 560 square feet, which would be 14 by 40 instead of 14 by 48. And all the other proposals accepted as proposed by the city. Okay, now,
I would be
Now
more
start
inclined
arguing.
to second it if the size limitation wasn't.
don't want to limit the size.
The size 14 by 48 is fine with me.
Again, and just a point of clarification, so the planning commission would understand why the 14 by 48, that was the industry standard sizes. So if there is a desire to have an adjustment on that, that's well within the planning commission's purview to make that recommendation. But the reason why that sizing was what was recommended was because when you have people that are in the advertising industry, they anticipate that there's going to be certain standards as far as sizing, and they design their items within that. Printing presses and the various mechanisms put into place for that are designed assuming certain standards. And that was the reason why a 14 by 48 was utilized.
I understand, but we seem to have a problem with that big of a size. And so that's why I'm saying we would make it smaller, but not as tiny as they are now. It would still give them the opportunity to make a bigger sign, but not as big to where it's overwhelming on our little side of this freeway.
Okay.
I'm
It's a
saying
one or
14 by 40. So want to do it by 42 instead of 48 then? I mean, instead of the 40 that I proposed, 42? But leave the size. What do you say about size? If we reduce the size, and according to this, there is no limit at this point. The current sign ordinance does not have 24, 12, nothing.
That is correct.
So if 10 people wanted to come up and put up signs right now, based on the old ordinance, they could.
If they could meet the current criteria within the municipal code, they could place as many of those as would be permitted within the allowed zone and spacing that the municipal code has right now.
They'll have to go through the commission.
Do you want to cover it this time?
Yeah, billboards would be required to go under a CUP. That's static and electric. Under the current municipal code.
But
Which again, the planning commission has the, you know, the ability to make that part of the recommendation as well. Right now, while we're looking at the static and saying that the static items would be by right and would be allowed, but anything going digital requires a CUP. If the planning commission were interested, you could also say, we want all billboards to go through a conditional use permit process.
okay, we have too many changes to make a motion. I withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Because we can't, there's too many variables. If we change one thing and then another thing and another thing, so we just table it till the next meeting and
I mean, I would recommend to continue the discussion personally, because I think that if it's tabled till next month, the only additional information that staff would be able to provide for you would be the total number of signs, legal
signs.
and illegal, non-conforming, which is not going to truly give more content than what we actually have right now, because those that are illegal need to be removed and would not count toward any of the numbers that we would be looking to discuss
that
at
number
this time.
doesn't
Anyways,
matter.
while I fully understand where Commissioner Singh is coming from, and I think that that is absolutely important to understand, that's more of the code enforcement side of the items that need to be.
That has no impact on what we're doing.
That's correct. Yeah, for the actual zone text amendment. So while it is difficult, my recommendation, of course, to the commission would be to take a few more minutes and talk through it. If there is consensus that the group feels that they can come to, a motion and a second to be made with certain amendments, then I would recommend that we get through that one tonight. If there isn't, then then you can always motion second to recommend denial as proposed.
How long?
I have a
the
question for
application-
staff.
Somebody has, one of the other commissioner.
Yeah, Chair Curry, the Vice Chair Juarez has comments as well.
So my question is, we had already approved this about 2 months ago, correct? And then it went to city council and council denied it. So essentially what we're doing is just basically saying we're approving what we approved 2 months ago. And now we're just adding a number of signs that we're going to be getting added. Is that correct? Or am I, because we had already supported that motion. So, I mean, we're just going back and forth between the size of the billboard and the number of billboards that we're going to have, but hadn't we already approved this?
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair Juarez. There certainly was conversation previously with the Planning Commission on this topic, but that application was had an individual applicant that brought forward a recommended text amendment at that time that the Planning Commission was in support of. That went before the Planning Commission or excuse me, the City Council, and that motion for support there failed. So the application was deemed denied because of that failure. Council then gave staff directive to go back and to have roundtable discussions with all of the stakeholders that wanted to be included within that, including the billboard companies, and to have discussions about a collaborative approach and then bringing forward a new zone text amendment for consideration at that time. And that's what's in front of you tonight. While it does have some elements that were included in the application that was discussed last year, it is different than that one. And it does have several items, some of which are being talked about tonight, that were not included within that application. So that application has already been denied and was denied by council earlier in the year. This is a continuation of the same topic, but being led now by the city so that we could have multiple stakeholders included in the application process.
Thank you for the clarification.
So if we require a CUP for every sign, so then it's not by right. So they wouldn't automatically get to put a sign up then if we required a CUP.
That's correct. They would still have to meet the criteria, but they would then have conditional items that would have to come before the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission would take action on approving that CUP. And at that time, the Planning Commission then would be the approval body for conditional use permit.
Or what we recommend today if city council.
Correct.
But we would, so basically they just be bringing it to us to say, this is what we're doing.
Proving that they meet the criteria. Yeah, and through the conditional use permit process, based upon specifics of that site, the Planning Commission can also have additional items that are required as conditions of approval.
We can add other things, even if they've met everything in the amendment.
There are certain items that could be proposed to the applicant, and if they are amenable to those items, then yes. But those are site specific. There's going to be reasons why.
Oh, okay. Like if it's too close, we want them to put a shorter one just because there's another one.
Correct.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, deflection of lighting or something of that nature.
If, Well, then I think the biggest thing then is the number, then we would reduce the number. We could have the size and the height. But right now we only have three. Only have three. 6 sides, but we only have 3.
Eyes of the existing.
So we're saying that they can have. But I'd say if the industry standard has increased, then I don't see why we shouldn't increase.
Sale, to sell the product. That's what's gonna drive the industry.
But the majority of them are being made in the bigger sizes now. Is that but you mean by industry?
I couldn't honestly say whether or not the majority are, but I can say that there was general consensus among the stakeholders that that is the industry standard of sizing at this time.
So even the people who were not for this in our agreement that that's what size.
Right. Again, acknowledgement that sizing wise is the industry standard at this time. There was general consensus there, even though there was still feedback received from the gentleman behind me that did consistently talk about the smaller signing, which does still exist.
And they can put up a smaller sign if they want to.
Correct. Yeah, these would be maximum heights and maximum sizes. They could, yes. Yeah, like most items within zoning, what you are typically conscious of is the maximum allowable type of items, right?
And Vice Chair Juarez did make a good observation that we approved this back in September. We approved the height, the size. Was it for one sign or was it 2?
It was actually a zone text amendment that would have
Was.
resulted in one sign immediately being built, but the application itself was a zone text amendment that would have allowed that standard.
All were under the impression that we're approving that particular sign, and that's why it did not generate as much.
Yeah, understood.
Right, and there was.
Yeah, it was certainly a zone text amendment though that would have allowed that, whatever that application was at that time, it would have been, that would have been the standard.
Every time I drive, I use billboards. They do. They help me. They help me find places to places to eat and where to get gas. And I mean, I use my GPS mostly, but it'll throw an idea my way. Well, that sounds kind of good. And
Well, just
again, I'm perfectly fine with 3, but everything else in the report to remain the same.
make a motion.
I move that we approve. What is this? 2022-0006, is that right?
Zoning text amendment.
Glasses on.
So you say 3 just to make sure that again is the 12 faces.
That'll be a total of 12.
Right, okay.
Correct. Yeah. I move we approve it with the amendment that we change the number from
24.
24 to 12. The height's fine, size is fine.
I second the motion.
We have a first on the floor with Commissioner Garcia, seconded by Commissioner Salas. Commissioner Gonzalez,
No.
Commissioner Singh,
Yes.
Vice Chair Juarez,
Yes.
Chairwoman Curry.
No.
For the record, that's 4 yeses and 2.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. That will be the recommendation that will go forward to the city council. As we stated there, they did have a public hearing notice that already went out for consideration on this topic. The staff report, of course, will go out late this week and will then be available, but that is for their August 15th meeting. And this is the recommendation that we will report to them with the discussion here, the following vote and those items. So thank you very much. Appreciate your extended conversation on that tonight to help us get to some good direction for the city council.
All right, one more time, oral communications. At this time, any member of the public may address the commission regarding any item over which the commission has jurisdiction. No action or discussion will be taken on any item not on the agenda. Issues raised will be referred to the chairperson for review. Members of the public shall limit their remarks to 3 minutes.
As a reminder to callers on the line, please use *9 to raise your virtual hand and *6 to mute yourself. Chair Curry, there are no callers on the line, and I believe no one in attendance.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Great. Meeting adjourned at 7:51.
Thank you.
Thank you.